Recently, there has been a big hubbub over the fixes and counterfixes of sexy comic art. Like the latest was an image of Mary Jane waiting for Peter Parker to come home from a hard day of being a hero or something like that. The primary response has been either support of the fixes or, "How dare you think you can fix my art!" or their art! Whoever. Meanwhile, as we bicker and moan over the cancer that is Tumblr continuing to metastasize through our culture, legacy media is also full of remakes, sequels, and other forms of franchising. These days, all they do is remake and sequelize. If you come with an original high-concept, big-budget idea, you're liable to be shut down unless you already have a big name to yourself, like Christopher Nolan or like James Cameron. Hell, these days the comics industry just mints new issue number ones and recasts existing heroes instead of developing new ones. And each iteration just shows less creativity, and the steam of the advantage of audience brand recognition is rapidly running into a problem of diminishing returns. This desire to correct the art we dislike isn't unique to the creatively bankrupt and the woke. A large portion of my mental creative efforts over the years have been expended on reworking existing works that in some way disappointed me. Event Horizon needed an extra scene where Dr. Weir looked into why his drive didn't actually take the ship to Proxima Centauri and instead took them into the 40K warp. Avatar needed to show some flaws on the Na'vi's side. Captain Rhodes in Day of the Dead needed to show everything he did was for his men, that he actually cared for them. The Dawn of the Dead remake needed more newscasts. The apocalypse needed to last more than a day. The Resident Evil film needed... well, that's a whole other video. The Resident Evil 2 remake needed to have the A and B scenarios properly implemented. Maybe split the RPD between the two characters and have them interact more. Resident Evil 3 remake needed to have more character, scope, and time in the city itself. Air Force One needed to have the cabinet refuse to negotiate, and Harrison Ford would have been on his own. Remove the enemy or everyone dies. Up the tension. There needs to be a Titanic film centered on what happened with Jack Thayer Jr. and how Titanic represented that time's 9/11 equivalent, but with the same aesthetic accuracy that we got in James Cameron's film. Why are we all doing this? We keep recreating what's been done before, or writing continuations for characters whose stories and worlds have already been shown. A certain kind of academic will tell you that it's the result of late-stage capitalism and the industrialization of media. There's too much noise, too many things competing for your time in an attention economy. No one has time for the classics anymore, and even if they did, no way to make Scrooge McDuck money re-releasing them in a world with perfect indexicality. A different kind of intelligentsia will say it's the result of a civilization in decline. The result of 100 years of infiltration and subversion by midwit, mediocre, ideologically possessed bourgeoisie. Rome, after the cult of Christ, took the levers of power. That the reason we don't create anything anymore is a combination of a rotten culture and the elevation of mediocre people. That we cannot come up with new ideas anymore. For myself, I can only say that these existing pieces I keep trying to perfect for myself in my head are for one of two reasons. The first is I want to love the piece more because they hit my autistically powered cringe sense. But aesthetically, there's something about them that grabs me and won't let go, so I can't simply ignore the work and move on to the next one. Either there is something in how it was shot that's super enjoyable to me, or just something in the aesthetic or acting that I love. Dr. Logan in Day of the Dead is super charismatic, as is Captain Rhodes and, honestly, even the other main characters. The Umbrella Corporation, Raccoon City, late 90s Wundertech, and classic viral zombies perfectly captures my imagination, and I'm still not entirely sure why. The Titanic hits my aesthetics just right. I also don't really know why. But I've gotten into plenty of situations where people laugh at me because I say no one has developed a ship that looks as beautiful as the Titanic does, or did. No matter what film Paul W.S. Anderson makes, bad or good, you can always tell that there's effort in everything that he does. He cares. He may not be competent enough to achieve it, but by God, you can see he's trying. But why don't I just come up with my own stuff? That's my judgment of myself lately. Where is my creative strength? I claim to be a storyteller, after all. Perhaps we have been dismantled by decades of deconstructionism with no synthesis. Perhaps it's the way narratives, both on the left and the right, have fallen apart, the failure of the end of history, and over the course of the long war, both at the front and at home. The dark possibility, though, is the other reason. A jealousy that we weren't the ones that created that art that we are trying to fix. Maybe all of us on this here platform really are the mediocre midwits of a dying culture, reaching out for the great works of the old masters with claws dripping green envy. I've been thinking long and hard about how to invoke the muses. Perhaps those that have brought new intellectual property into the world were no less autistically renovative of the stories that have absorbed them than I am. After all, isn't the inception of 50 Shades of Grey originally an adult fanfiction of Twilight, which itself was a fanfiction of Harry Potter, which itself was a fanfiction of The Worst Witch? Ooh, round out! Round out! Star Wars was George Lucas applying the framework of Joseph Campbell to Buck Rogers. So perhaps it isn't a lack of creativity. Perhaps there is a step I'm not taking in the process. Perhaps I should be taking that desire to modify an aesthetically pulling idea and use it to birth a new muse. Pull that pathos that ties me to the almost perfect story, use my discipline and the adversity of what I have available to me, and synthesize it. And by that way, create something new. There's a meme about how the Chinese kids all want to be astronauts and engineers, while all our youth want to be influencers. In the media creation community, there is definitely a feeling that the golden throne is to adapt the art you loved from the old medium into the new. A book you loved to a movie or TV show, or a movie into a game, or to be that guy that gets to create the sequel to their favorite film. There's also that meme about the backlog of 200 Steam titles you need to play for the first time, but instead, you play that old favorite you've already beaten 20 times. Guilty. Very, very, very guilty. Maybe it's our lack of courage. In the aftermath of the victories of yesteryear, we have become soft and afraid of the unknown, of the new, of our own capacity. So we retreat to the wholesome, the nostalgic, the cozy. Maybe that's it. It's much easier and safer to armchair general what the giants whose shoulders we stood on have done than to put in the pain and effort it takes to become such a titan. So we critique, we rebrush, reboot, remake, we franchise. But every day we do that, the steam in the boiler of our culture cools. I don't know about you, but I hope to find my courage before the night comes back around, and we have nothing but smoldering embers to heat us and light the darkness. Thank you for watching. If you think this is a way off, please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, let me know as well. I'm not sure exactly what I'll be covering next, but it's entirely possible I'll have to skip out next week as I attempt to stretch talking about letter couriers at the Battle of Cowpens to a 5-page paper. Like and subscribe, share with your battle buddies, and have a great day.